Today I am in the Newtown supplement store with our local supplement expert Lloyd, and we are going to talk about the supplements that are good for competition preparation, muscle building and fat loss. So Lloyd, can you first tell us how your, obsession with the supplements became?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's hard for me to even remember at this stage, but I think I was just always fascinated with supplementation and the ways it can augment your results and your focus and, different parts of your physiology. And so that curiosity just led me down a path where I did a lot of research, and before I knew it, I was becoming a mad scientist, buying supplements every week, ordering them from the US and God knows where. And then we eventually ended up with a store of our own, and this is where we are today.
Okay, what are the main 3 or 4 supplements that natural bodybuilders should take during their comp prep?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, definitely protein is number 1. Now, some coaches will want you to stop that closer to the stage date, but we'll just put it out there that hitting your protein macro is probably the number 1 thing to do, and protein powder helps you do that. Number 2 would probably be creatine, monohydrate or hydrochloride. Again, your coach might want you to pull out the monohydrate closer to stage date, but in the muscle building phase, it's very, very important and effective. I'd say glutamine, it's great for your recovery, for your muscle soreness, helps you prevent you from getting sick as often as well, which will slow down your training and your results. And then probably last but not least, I think EAAs can be really effective at speeding up your recovery and helping you fill in any nutrient gaps as you're training.
Is there any supplement that can increase pump or better look on the stage to take on the day before the stage or the day before?
Absolutely, and everyone has their own secret recipe here. So this is where you're going to get different advice from different people, but most of the time a pre-stage pump will consist of something like citrulline or citrulline malate, some arginine, maybe 1 or 2 grams, not too much. Some people like to have dark chocolate to get some of the epicatechins in there. Other people will have a little bit of red wine. Everyone's got their own little. Some people have glycerol. I wouldn't recommend that because you're kind of sometimes water depleted, and that'll sort of suck some of the water out of where you need it to be. But I would definitely look at about 4 to 6 grams of citrulline, 1 gram of arginine, and then something like pine bark or the dark chocolate for a really nice pump before you hit the stage.
How about eating a dark chocolate brownie? Would that do
magic
as well?
I think you want to avoid too many fats in whatever it is. So often people will be carbing up a little bit as well. And again, there's lots of secret recipes out there. But one thing you don't want is too many fats on the day before you hit the stage. That'll sort of really slow you down, make you feel a bit sluggish at the time.
Okay. And post-competition question, what are the supplements that the competitors should take to recover after the competition?
Yeah, absolutely. I think collagen is a great supplement to help you start putting back together some of your collagen stores and the elastin in your skin and so on. Helps with your gut lining as well. I think obviously getting your protein macro right, so whether you can do that with food as you kind of start reverse dieting, or you want to bring the protein powder back in, that should be fine after comp and you'll be able to start repairing. Definitely glutamine, lots of electrolytes to restore all your fluid levels. Taurine, which is usually in electrolyte blends anyway, so that should be fine, but if it's not, add some in. Magnesium, lots of rest, maybe something to reduce a bit of cortisol like ashwagandha so you're getting good sleep, and maybe just some patience before you go and compete again because your body needs some time to rest.
As competitors, we go through different diets, and obviously we are losing a lot of fat prior to the stage time. Are there any supplements that we can take to prevent stomach upset, because it's for example happening to me as well?
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely take digestive enzymes. In fact, I strongly suggest them. I've got some back here. You can have that with every meal, that's fine. Often they'll have a bunch of different enzymes that you naturally produce, but it'll help you produce some more exogenously, which just means externally. Also bromelain is another great digestive enzyme. It comes from pineapple. You can get that as well. It's really good for breaking down protein. Soy lecithin or sunflower lecithin helps you break down fats, which might be low enough that you don't need it, but if you're eating fats, take that with them. But that becomes really important as you get closer to your stage day, so definitely consider digestive enzymes. They're relatively inexpensive and readily available at most supplement stores.
Is there any supplement that competitors should strictly avoid if they have an upset stomach?
Yeah, definitely large doses of caffeine. Massive doses of citrulline, so don't go too heavy on the citrulline even on your pump up day. That can have a laxative effect. And definitely no Fedosia agrestis. It's not something that female competitors would probably be taking, but male competitors might because it helps raise natural testosterone. Very rough on the stomach and the digestion though.
Good to know. And also creatine sometimes, right?
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
If you do a lot, right?
Especially monohydrate that's maybe like poor quality. I think it's much safer to have creatine hydrochloride when you're competing, in my personal opinion. Monohydrate, great for a building phase, but as you come out of that phase and your calories get restricted, maybe switch to hydrochloride. It's a lot easier on the stomach and much easier to absorb. But if you are going to use monohydrate, make sure it's Creapure if possible. It's one of the highest grade creatine monos you can get. And just check if the granule size is nice and fine. It should look like talcum powder, not like sugar crystals. You know, if it's sparkling, when you sort of twist the tub around, avoid that. That can upset your stomach.
That's a great tip. And are there any supplements you would personally suggest for the people to support the healthy digestion every day?
Yeah, I think a good green supplement would be ideal because they have some polyphenols in there. They often have digestive enzymes in there with them and probiotics. And it helps give the gut just enough irritation to cause a bit of hormesis, which is basically you want a little bit of irritation to get the gut performing the right way and have the right flora and fauna in the gut lining and intestine. And so greens tend to do that. As you get closer to your stage day, you might want to pull them out just because there are maybe a little bit of calories in there and you don't want too much kind of, I guess, effect in the stomach going on. But they are really good to take on a daily basis for a good regular kind of movement and a good sort of environment in the gut.
An additional question to this one, what should be in a greens powder? Because I feel like when I was looking for myself, I found the different types or different brands, but they all have different stuff in it. So what are we looking at that it's a must-have?
I think you really want to see some greens and reds in there. So whether they're coming from, you know, broccoli, kale, spirulina, you want to see a good variety of both types, so greens and reds. You also want to see some digestive enzymes and some probiotics and maybe even some prebiotics in there as well. If you're starting to see some of those things in there, then you've got a decent greens on your hands. Some even go a step further and have things like fulvic acid and some other great additions like some medicinal mushrooms in there as well. And that's also awesome. It gets quite complicated though, so sometimes with those sorts of products, I get people to show me what they're taking so I can just kind of guide them through what I think is good or bad about that particular supplement. So best case scenario, come to the Newtown supplement store and we'll get you on a great product.
We'll get you sorted over here. Alrighty, moving on to the muscle building and performance questions. So what are the best supplements for muscle gain?
Yeah, I think still to this day it's going to be creatine. You can look at some that are less known, like ecdysterone. I think I've got one here I can just show. This has been really effective in studies, human studies, and competitors that we know have taken it before and seen great results, and it's still safe and natural. It's not a banned substance. This is a natural plant extract that binds to the beta estrogen receptor and turns on protein synthesis. So it's natural, but it is aiding in an anabolic environment. And then there's some new advancements. There's something called dileucine peptide, which is basically just a dileucine. It's two leucine molecules bonded together, and it boosts protein synthesis higher than regular leucine. So we're seeing some good results in studies with that as well on 1 rep max leg press and some protein synthesis improvements, about 42% over baseline. So there's definitely some other things you can explore. Creatine's a big one, and making sure you get adequate protein is the other big one. You want to make sure you got those two bases covered first, but we do have some other things now that can also assist, and they are natural.
That's great. And on top of this question, maybe very similar. So what are the pre-workout and post-workout supplements that we should take to build the muscles? Also, I think with some supplements, the order, whether you take it obviously pre-workout, you're gonna take pre, and the post-workout, like what to take when.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on what macros you're working with. Pre-workout, definitely a bit of caffeine, obviously not too much, but wherever you're at with your tolerance, about 200 milligrams. Pre-workout, you can look at beta-alanine, which will improve your, basically how many repetitions you can perform. So it buffers the lactic acid in the muscle. Those few extra reps can help you trigger more muscle growth. So you get a bit more stimulus that way. improves your endurance. Citrulline, again, don't overdo it, but maybe 4 grams to 6 grams before a workout, more blood flow, and that will help with the muscle recovery later, because more blood flow in there, more nutrient delivery is the theory, plus you get a nice pump. Post, you're probably looking at things like carbohydrates, so again, fit it in with your macros, but it's a good time to spike insulin. It's also a great time to take some protein, and at that time, a protein shake is probably ideal because you can get some protein in quite quickly and digest it quite easily, and then you can have your post-workout meal a little bit later without being in a catabolic state for too long. You want to, at least 2 hours after training, you want to start getting some nutrients back in.
That's great. And top question, I think that many people may be interested in knowing, are there any possible natural alternatives to anabolic steroids?
Yeah, I think some of the supplements we already mentioned would fit into that category. So obviously, creatine, you can look at ecdysterone, the dileucine, maybe laxogenin. These are all plant extracts that do show that they work in studies. I think you can also consider something like HMB, which is another leucine derivative that helps you keep muscle on a cut. So we can maybe talk about that in a question coming up, but it will help you lose less muscle when you're in a calorie deficit, which is not to be underestimated when you're trying to hit the stage with as much muscle as possible. So there's options. They're not going to be as dramatic as anabolic steroids, but they will deliver results that people probably don't realize are fairly impressive. Not enough people explore these natural options, in my view.
Okay, now moving on to the part for the bodybuilders on a cut and for the people looking to lose fat.
Yep.
What are, in your opinion, the best fat burners? And is there any preference in a powder or the capsule consistency,
yep,
or it doesn't really matter?
Yeah, I think in Australia you're going to find powders much more readily because capsules have to be registered and they're harder to get approved. So you'll see more potent powder products probably on the shelves in Australia. We certainly have some of those too. You're looking for something called Grains of Paradise seed extract. It's one of the best thermogenic ingredients you can really get. Synephrine, and then maybe something called lean GBB. They'd be my sort of top 3 fat burning ingredients, and obviously a bit of caffeine, which will help suppress appetite too. So you probably want to look for that in your product. There's a fair few that do cover those bases, and you probably want to take that every day. You're not going to see a lot of benefit from a thermogenic fat burner if you just take it before training. It needs to be like a daily morning thing to get a consistent thermogenic effect going throughout the day.
Yeah, that's great. And now, question, but you can first answer, what is CLA?
Conjugated linoleic acid.
Okay.
Yeah, CLA is interesting. It's basically it's a type of fat, like it's an omega from memory. It's from the same kind of family of fats, and in animals it has a dramatic effect. So they did some animal studies. I remember particularly in pigs, and they got shredded. It was very effective at reducing body fat and preserving muscle mass. In humans, we're not able to replicate that effect to the same degree, so the jury's still out on whether it's an effective supplement or not, but it is safe, it is natural, and a lot of people still use it. And even myself, I'm curious enough to still probably consider that worth giving to a competitor if they had the budget and just wanted to throw everything at it that was natural. I'd still try it. Some people talk about it helping with some of the visceral fat, which is around the organs, as a preference to subcutaneous fat, which is under the skin. And some people swear by it, other people don't notice much. So it's probably worth a try. It's not that expensive, so you could experiment with it.
Yeah, that's great. And are there any appetite suppressant for the fitness or for the bodybuilders that they can take, or you wouldn't recommend do that?
No, I think it's a good way to come at it actually. Grains of Paradise, synephrine, caffeine, they all do reduce your appetite. And then there's Garcinia cambogia, say that 3 times fast. I think it's green coffee bean. They're probably the 2 best appetite suppressants in an ingredient, and you'll find that in some of your fat burners anyway. So usually a good comprehensive powdered fat burner is going to have some appetite suppressants, some thermogenics, and some stimulants, and that'll sort of help you reduce that appetite. It is an effective strategy, particularly at first, because you're sort of battling with your normal hunger levels, but over time you do get used to them. And that hunger is still going to be there to a degree.
Still going to come for you.
Yeah, it's still coming for you. It's one of those things.
And are there any supplements that preserve muscle during a cut?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the 2 main ones that I've seen work in competitors and in studies would be HMB, mostly in the studies. I haven't seen a lot of competitors use it for that purpose, so I think maybe more should explore it because it's, again, relatively inexpensive. And then definitely laxagenin. I've seen people get pretty good muscle preservation with that. It's a plant extract. There's one here, just for an example. It does give you like kind of a harder look, a sort of a drier look. I think it's a little bit anti-estrogenic as well. So you could try the two of those together or separately as something safe and natural that you could help preserve your muscle on a cut with. And then obviously adequate protein levels and amino acids will help a fair bit too. Again, fitting in with your macros. But if you're making sure you keep your protein high while you reduce your fats and carbs, then that will help with preserving the muscle as well.
So should I use a non-stimulant pre-workout if I work out at night?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Because if you interrupt your sleep, you're probably going to really encumber your muscle gains more than anything else if you're not getting great sleep. That's one of the most anabolic things you can do is get a good night's sleep. And sometimes that's just hard to make happen. But one thing that'll definitely not help is having large doses of caffeine in the evening. So I think non-stim pre's for any competitor are almost a must, unless you can get away with not using anything. But there are some that still give focus, pump. They still have the beta-alanine for the endurance and the tingling sensation. But once that wears off, you'll sleep fine. They're not, blocking adenosine, which is what keeps you awake with caffeine. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I think it's a great way. And of course, you get a nice pump. You're feeding nutrients into the muscles. It's going to help with the mind-muscle connection when you feel that pump. So I suggest them, absolutely.
Oh, so there is no like a lower effect on the pre-workout if it's non-stim or stim, or is there a...
There's definitely less effect. It's a good thing that you asked that, because sometimes people come to a non-stim pre expecting it to hit as hard as something with 400 milligrams of caffeine, and we have to be realistic. It's not going to do that, but that's why you can still sleep. But there are some that deliver a pretty good effect for something that has no caffeine, Dissident from Unmatched being one of them. I know you're a fan. It's not bad. You still get this mood lift and this endurance boost and this desire to train and a great pump, but it's not as good as having maybe 420 milligrams of caffeine on top.
Got it. So why do athletes need electrolytes, and does it have the same effect if I will drink a sports drink instead of the electrolytes?
Yeah, look, most sports drinks are really just electrolyte drinks anyway, maybe with some carbohydrates though, so you want to make sure you're factoring that in. Sometimes you want that, and some people swear by some Powerade before the stage day and so on. Electrolytes are really important for hydration, so just drinking water doesn't always hydrate the body. There's a process called osmosis, and salts and potassium and magnesium, these are all salts technically, dictate where the water flows into the body and into the cells and hydrates them adequately. So you want a nice balance of these. You sweat out a lot of them in your sweat, so you do need to replace them. And if anyone's been on stage before or been posing for long periods, you'll know that you do sweat a fair bit. And if you train hard, you sweat a lot too. And if you're doing your cardio, you sweat. So you're losing all those salts all the time, and you're going to need to top them up because your food may not have adequate amounts because you're putting your body through its paces. Yeah. So it's great to have an electrolyte drink to just top that up nicely. And they will help you with muscle signaling as well. So it helps you with muscle contractions and nervous system function. And when you don't have enough electrolytes, you will start to notice you'll cramp more. You might get headaches, it's not a great thing. You get brain fog, so keep that in your stack if possible, and you can use a sports drink like Gatorade if you like. It's still certainly better than nothing. Yeah. I do think we have some better products that are better dosed than that, but still, if you're using Gatorade, that's fine. It's still going to help.
And what would you suggest, for example, now I'm 1 week out to my comp, and I do cardio almost every day, let's say 5-6 times a week now, and I do strength training as well. Just one dose of electrolytes is okay, or should I increase at this time because of the cardio is going up?
You'll have to listen to your body, like with anything when it comes to prepping and performance, athletic performance. But 1 to 2 doses per day should be enough, depending on also how much liquid you're having. So when you're having more liquid, there's sometimes a water loading phase. Increase the electrolytes a little bit then, maybe 3 doses. But for the average day, maybe 1 to 2, depending on the person and how big they are as well.
So what are the best supplements you would suggest for muscle recovery?
Yeah, I think glutamine's a big one. It really does seem to help with recovery, positive nitrogen retention in the muscle, which is basically what you want. You know, you want food in the muscle, is another way to put that. Obviously adequate amino acids and protein. So that's either from the diet, that's from you topping it up with some EAAs around training, which often have electrolytes in them as well, so that's kind of handy. And then I think adequate protein from the diet, they're the 3 key ones really for recovering from you can't really get around needing enough protein. If that isn't taken care of first, those other things are going to have a very minimal effect. So make sure you're on top of that. And your coach will know how much you need to have each day. You've got to be really strict with that.
That's great. And going back to glutamine, does it also help to avoid the muscle soreness?
Yeah, glutamine will reduce your DOMS. Definitely I find amino acids help with that too, and obviously the adequate protein levels. Those 3 things are the only things that have ever personally helped me, and I've messed around with a lot of supplements outside of maybe something more exogenous like the anabolic, steroid side of things. But they're all still going to require you to eat enough protein to feed that repair. So you may as well be on top of that. But glutamine definitely seems to help. You expend a lot of glutamine with high intensity training, so you burn up a lot of your body's stores of it, so it's easy to become deficient in it. And if you become deficient in it, it can be a bottleneck to your recovery, so it's really good to supplement with it. Fairly inexpensive. Some EAAs have a top up of that in them as well, so that will help too.
And would you say that are there any specific anti-inflammatory supplements for athletes, for example, to avoid the stomach inflammation or overall body inflammation?
Yeah, you can look at things like curcumin, which is the active ingredient in turmeric. One brand I find really good is the Herbs of Gold curcumin. That's quite effective. You can look at something called PEA as well. It's kind of a newer ingredient to the market. You can also get it from Herbs of Gold and some other brands. I would have that before bed though, because it makes you a bit foggy, whereas the curcumin you could have throughout the day. The time not to take anti-inflammatory natural supplements like that though is probably not post-workout. You want your natural inflammatory response post-workout for at least a couple of hours anyway, because that's when the prostaglandins get activated and do their thing, which starts to kick off some of the protein synthesis you need. And you don't want to inhibit that. It would only be a minuscule inhibition, but the thought is to give it a couple of hours before you use any kind of natural anti-inflammatory. And obviously stronger anti-inflammatories like Nurofen are less than ideal because there've been some studies done where they can restrict some of your muscle growth to a small degree. I mean, if you're in a lot of pain, still take it. But if you can avoid it and stick with the natural options, do that.
Okay, so curcumin.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, some do nothing, but that particular brand I found,
right.
1 or 2 pills of that, you will notice something.
Yeah. I know that you talk about this topic a lot on your channel as well. So can you tell us what are the example of the natural testosterone boosters?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key ones that work in humans, and we've got good studies on them and also client feedback, would be Shilajit, obviously a good quality one, D-aspartic acid, fenugreek, Tongat-Ali. They're probably the big ones that have actual human studies to back them up. Another one that I really rate is Bulbine natalensis. There's only the one human study on that, but I think from the anecdotal, which is the experiential feedback that I'm getting from people and myself, it's a very effective test booster as well. I would stay away from Fedosia. Hasn't got any human studies, really seems to upset people's stomachs. And although it seems to work anecdotally, it's probably just not worth the effort when it absolutely just shreds your insides. It's pretty brutal. So yeah, they're my go-tos.
Can you tell me if the DHEA can help with the athlete's performance, and would you recommend it for anyone?
You know, I wouldn't personally recommend DHEA. It's actually prescription only in Australia now anyway, but you can still get it online and you could source it. But I find that it being a hormone that's so far up the chain of the hormonal cascade, it tends to convert into a lot of estrogen in some people, and that can throw your hormones out of whack in a way that you don't really want. So it's very hit and miss depending on your unique endocrinology, and I just don't think it's a target hormone, meaning it doesn't result in necessarily what you specifically want out of it. It really depends on what your body decides to do with it. So not a big fan. When you get excessively estrogenic, you start holding a bit more body fat. You might get estrogenic side effects, which are undesirable, particularly in men, and it can be kind of counterintuitive to your training goals. So not a huge fan personally.
And what are the good adaptogens and what exactly it is for stress and performance?
Yeah, so I guess adaptogens are basically defined as herbs that assist with dealing with different types of stress. So whether that's temperature, whether that's like environmental stress or physical stress. Ashwagandha is probably the most well-known one, and that helps lower cortisol. Really good for having at night. Some people say if you take it for too long, it can kind of numb you a little bit. I've never personally noticed that, but some people I really trust have noticed it. So it's like, okay, depends on the person. The other adaptogen that's probably most well-known is rhodiola, but it is hard to get now because it's going extinct in the wild. So China's putting reductions on exporting it, and there's some issues sourcing it now. So you won't see that as much. It's a bit more of a mood and energy booster. And there's a few others out there like St. John's wort and a few others that can help with mood and so on. So they are great herbs to explore if you are looking for a little bit of assistance when you're in times of stress.
Yeah, good. Now, questions for the ladies. What are the best supplements for the women that would help them to build the lean muscle?
Yeah, I mean, look, the same supplements for men for building lean muscle apply to women. There isn't much difference there, particularly if we're not talking about exogenous, anabolic compounds and so on. So definitely HMB, the laxagenum, the ecdysterone, the creatine first, obviously. Women really shouldn't be afraid of creatine. As I always say, if you were looking for a bit less water retention, look at the creatine hydrochloride. Otherwise, get yourself a good quality monohydrate and get those gains. And you can look at the dileucine peptide. This is a new, it's basically just a form of leucine. Don't be too freaked out by the peptide word. These are natural peptides. So all of those could be explored, making sure you get adequate protein and amino acids, and obviously creating plenty of stimulus through training, and getting adequate sleep, which is often overlooked.
And would you say, are there any supplements that the female should strictly avoid in terms of the regular fitness, like going to the gym, trying to build up the muscles, or in a prep that somebody would suggest them randomly and they want to buy it? Is there something that you wouldn't recommend?
No, there's actually no particular supplement that is on the market, to my knowledge, that women should strongly avoid right now. Maybe if we get right down the rabbit hole on some hormonal things, we could explore that, but none of the herbs, even the test boosting herbs that I talked about, they're actually fine for women to take. They will never override your body's natural processes, and that's the beauty of some of these natural suggestions that we're making today. When it comes to exogenous compounds that we're introducing into the body, like anabolics, then yes, it's a whole different kettle of fish. There's some that are just absolutely no for women. There's some that are thought to be okay for women and so on. So you'd have to really talk to a subject matter expert on that if you wanted to go down that sort of path. Then you could really be disrupting some of your hormonal balances. But all of these natural herbs and natural muscle builders that we've talked about, they should be absolutely fine for men and women.
And let's say for the female, if they are looking to reduce the water retention, what is the best thing that you would suggest?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at DIM and calcium D-glucarate. They're probably two of the better estrogen inhibitors that just slow down how much estrogen the body's converting, and that'll help with water weight. You can look at natural diuretics, so dandelion root, a little bit of magnesium, some horsetail. There's a few other herbs that help you shed water. You wouldn't want to do them all the time. I mean,
that's what my next question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question to ask. You could probably take dandelion root all the time, and some people do in a tea. It's like some parts of Europe, it's a normal tea to have every day. But anything above that, I wouldn't take all the time. I'd just take it around a period of time where you really want to flush out some excessive water. So whether that's before the stage, whether that's for a photo shoot, maybe just for the beach that month if you really wanted to look lean. Yeah, on a holiday. But ultimately, it's not something you can run all the time because your kidney's going to start flushing out some of the water that you sort of want in the body for healthy life processes. But you can look at we do have products like that, and you'll see them around at supplement stores, things like this. They're safe and natural. The really strong not natural diuretics are quite dangerous. So you want to have a coach that knows what they're doing. You want to use that maybe once before the stage. You want to be really careful if you're talking about anything beyond that. But these sort of products, they're relatively safe to use. I just wouldn't use it all the time.
That's great. Thank you so much, Lloyd.
No worries.
If you like this video, give it the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe here and to Newtown Supplement Store channel.